Hello and welcome back to video 3 of the 5-part video series being offered to TaAF by Renair Wellbeing. I'm Nimet Renair. I'm a leadership and organizational wellbeing consultant, coach, and trainer. So today we're going to focus very much on self-awareness and self-management of our feelings and emotions, so that we can bring ourselves back to that place of resilience or that place of emotional and thinking balance as we move then into either being aware of how we're managing our teams, managing ourselves, and the choices that we're making. And it's so important that we are managing ourselves. I know that a phase in my life where I was very close to burnout, I lost a sense of any self autonomy around choices that I actually had to look after myself, believing that if I could just keep working and focusing on what needed to be done and focusing on others, that was more important. But of course, very soon I realized that that very intention of doing well by my team and doing well by my family and doing well in terms of my purpose in life, I did need to pay attention and include myself as well in all that I wished for others too. And it starts with self awareness and, in a way, a relationship with yourself. And that starts also with beginning to be aware of your body. Now, what I mean by that is we can go around all day long and not be conscious that we are moving with our body, in our body, with our body. And I know I took my body for granted, very much so, until one day, in a moment of an epiphany, I realized that this heart of mine was beating every day, night and day, um, because it was serving me. My lungs were breathing for me, taking in air, expelling air. My digestion was doing its very best to digest what I was putting in my stomach. I wasn't helping it with the amount of cortisol that was in my system because of my levels of not managing my emotions and my thoughts in the way that I am now learning to do. Okay. So, this idea of self management and self awareness is very much part of what's being called emotional intelligence. And it has 5 elements. Self management, well, it starts with self awareness. Once you're aware, you start to think about, how do I manage myself? Manage is very different from being suppressive or oppressive with yourself. It's a very much managing yourself towards your own best interest. Towards your own best well-being and support of yourself. You then have a level of empathy. Now, the more emotionally flooded we are, the harder it is to be empathic, because we're lost in ourselves and in our feelings, and it's very difficult to notice or see or have any space for that. And as managers, empathy and noticing what's happening for others is so vital in terms of building good rapport, good relationship, mentoring, coaching, and even giving direction and feedback to those you manage. But that comes back to your own self management and well being. And then the fourth and fifth aspects of emotional intelligence are social awareness and relationships, and how you manage that. So here's a definition of emotional intelligence by Daniel Goleman, who very much brought this idea into the mainstream. And his definition is: emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and manage our own emotions, as well as the ability to identify, understand, and influence the feelings of others. Now, influence the feelings of others isn't manipulate the feelings of others, it's recognizing that when you're aware and you're understanding how someone is, you can support them in terms of maybe helping them take a different perspective, or just helping them come back to that balanced stage so that they can then find their own solutions. Okay, so this for me is extremely important and an area that in this short video we can only raise awareness around, but to begin to think about developing. And for today's video, what I want to do is to focus on really the arena of how do we self-manage our feelings. If you remember, I said to you in video 2 that sometimes our prefrontal cortex can go offline when we are emotionally flooded. And we want to bring our prefrontal cortex back online as quickly as we can to gain some kind of a perspective. Now, the opposite is true also, that when our feelings are offline because we've pushed it down so much, we also want to check in there because there's good information there as well. Now, one of the things about feelings is that growing up, I came to believe that there were feelings that were good and feelings that were bad, and that therefore it was not good to have bad feelings. So jealousy, envy, irritation, anger, frustration, these were all in the category of bad feelings, right? So even though I may have experienced them, I was probably doing a lot of beach ball. And then, of course, I'd going up into being emotionally flooded because I didn't realize that whether I wanted it or not, those feelings were giving me some information about what was happening for me in the world. Okay, so feelings are not good, feelings are not bad. I would like to say to you that feelings are valid. They're valid information. Just like our thoughts, you're going to feel what you're going to feel. The question is what you do with that information. So judging yourself or judging myself for having a feeling, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. But naming it and saying, "Oh, I feel a bit envious here," is good information. Now you can do something about it. Judging yourself may not be one of them, but just to say, well, maybe what is it that they have that I wish I had more of in my life? There you go. You've used that emotion to give you information to make some choices about it. Okay. Now, the other thing about feelings, and I think sometimes, especially when I listen to myself or other parents who may sometimes say to children, don't be angry or don't be annoying or don't be. Actually, the issue isn't the feeling, it's the behavior, right? So there are multiple ways of expressing a feeling, right? If I'm annoyed about something, if I go around smashing things and saying hurtful things, that's one way to express it. Another way might be to push it down and pretend it hasn't happened, but it's certainly going to grow in energy inside the pit of my stomach and then come out as a beach ball inappropriately another time. Or there might be a way of firstly saying, I'm annoyed about this, and to begin to understand it. And there is skills to be learned on how do you express and share your feelings with someone else in a way that is more constructive for yourself and for the other person. So feelings are valid, but we have choices on how we behave. And often we pay attention to behaviors, which sometimes, if they're inappropriate, we make the feeling bad, but the feeling is the feeling. Okay? So, how do we help ourselves with the level of self awareness, first of all, which is notice how your body's responding? If you can start to develop and paying attention, it's as simple as how's my stomach, knotted or relaxed? Um, how is my solar plexus? Feeling like I've been punched, or is it actually easy breezy? How is my chest? Tight, or is it actually open and expanded and relaxed? How's my throat? For me, my throat is one of my early um, sort of signals. I can suddenly feel like I have a stone in my throat, and often it's when I'm not able to express what I really want to say, or I don't feel that I've been heard. It'll go. It's very subtle, but I've learned to pick up the signal early on before it becomes a full blown emotion. The other is the quality of your breathing. Sometimes people check how are my shoulders, because that's where their body responds first. Some people check their jaw, am I clenched, am I fists? So start to learn and pay attention. Now, one is the clenching, but the other is then if you do the opposite, to say clenched jaw, I'll relax it. Clenched fist, I'll relax it. Take a deep breath. I've already worked this relationship between body, emotions, and thoughts and changed one thing. So sometimes you can start with your body, and our bodies know well before our prefrontal cortex gets the idea of what's going on, our body's already picked it up, right? So it's very, very important to start becoming aware of what's happening in our body. That often then gets translated into an emotion, which starts to reach our awareness, and you'll then interpret it. And for this series, we will not be going in depth in that on what do we do with perception and how do we manage it, but just to know that at every stage of this process, we are shaping in a way our reaction and responses. And the more we can start to be aware and make a choice, we start to feel better on the inside. So notice your inner narrative, your relationship to the feeling, and expand your feeling words vocabulary. So I'm going to leave this video at this point because this is really a very important strategy as we begin to think about our overall well-being, is to begin to claim our ability to manage ourselves. Because as you start to do that, you can know that, okay, for physical activity, what will feel right now? I want to move, but I definitely don't want to do a sprint or a run. Okay, gently, I will today go for a gentle walk, or I'm going to walk on the spot at home. And other days, you notice you're full of, you've slept well, you've got energy, and you might suggest to friends, let's go dancing, or let's do something that allows us to be social because you prefer to be with people. Or sometimes you might say, right, I actually want to sign up to a class, or whatever it is. But knowing what's happening for you, you can make and choose strategies that are aligned to you and your own self-care. Okay, so I hope this was helpful to you, and I very much look forward to seeing you in video 4. Bye bye.